Can I request Aditya if you can tell everybody outside to just come in? A warm welcome and good morning to all of you. I would like to welcome all of you to the 19th Foundation Day of SINE. My name is Rakesh Rajiv and I manage partnerships at SINE. SINE's journey started in the early 2000s at a time when entrepreneurship and startups were not buzzwords in India like how we have it now. In fact, the foundation of incubation at IIT Bombay was laid in the late 90s with the contribution and able mentorship of distinguished alumni, Mr. Kanwal Rekhi and Mr. Nandan Nilekani. Professor Deepak Phatak from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering led that initiative. Fast forward to today, crossing over 2 decades and 200 plus startups, SINE has evolved to be a leading incubator in the country, and today, we are here today to celebrate entrepreneurship. We are here to hear stories of grit, guts, and glory, and to know what goes behind building organizations. In addition to this, we have few of our current incubatee startups who have showcased their products. In fact, we have 8 of our incubatees who have showcased their products just outside this auditorium. Please feel free to network with the entrepreneurs post this session. And to start the proceedings for the day, I would like to invite Professor Santosh Garpure, Professor in charge at SINE and Professor at the Department of Chemistry at IIT Bombay. As a faculty in charge, Professor Garpure has been playing a critical role of providing strategic guidance in helping SINE achieve its vision. His perspective on applied research goes beyond the labs through his proactive collaborations with industry partners. I welcome Professor Garpure for the welcome note.
Thank you, Rakesh, for those kind words of introduction and setting the stage. I welcome you all to IIT Bombay and to SINE on SINE's behalf and on my personal behalf. This particular event we have been planning for a while now. The last one happened was not in this hall but the hall across the corridor almost 4 years ago, and that was probably one of the last events that we had dialogue with stakeholder where SINE's 15th Foundation Day was celebrated before everybody was locked up due to once in a century hopefully event. So we are now back in action in this particular forum where we celebrate the entrepreneurship at large, and what better day from our point of view than celebrating it on SINE's Foundation Day. Just to give you a brief building on what Rakesh mentioned, SINE started at a time when people were worried about .com boom and bust, right? I mean, IIT has always been known for producing great students who go places across the globe and do fantastically well with whoever is employing them. And that was the time when there was a thought that while our students are excellent when they are working as employee, can they also be trained or take the bet of becoming an entrepreneur and become job creators? And with that motivation, a pilot was ran in probably around 2000, and I see one of the first of that lot being present here. So it's wonderful feeling that some of these entrepreneurs kind of paid to the faith that was shown by the system in them and did make a mark in the entrepreneurship space. So that confidence, what was obtained from the initial startup, the pilot I would call it that time, is what led to the creation of SINE. So they sowed the seed, and SINE was started in 2004 in the society structure, which was par for course at that point in time. So initial years, when, like I said, there was no buzz on the entrepreneurship. So initial decade, I would say, we spent time on building up processes, and processes which should be solid, which should stand the test of time. And in fact, I can very proudly say that the processes which were built then, even today, government bodies across the country try to look at these. Good part about SINE thing is that we are quite transparent about it. Most of these processes are available to anybody who is wanting to access them. So they are available on our website. So those processes are in place. And then the next decade, so if you look at last 7-8 years, there is inflection. So what we did probably in first 10 years in terms of number of startups, if I use that as one of the metrics, we would have done more than double of that in the next 8. And right now, even despite the pandemic years, the strike rate has been quite phenomenal, largely because the ecosystem has been evolving. We are in an institute which is changing its nature from a largely undergraduate institute. We are now 60% plus is postgraduate. So you can see that deep tech ideas will come because a lot of research is happening compared to, let's say, 30-40 years ago. And that is something which we are seeing it, that people are working on basic science, applied research, and then that naturally leads to the entrepreneurship. So we have colleagues who are dreaming big, trying to not solve medical problems, but also trying to think of taking big leap to the space as well. Okay, and so we have all spectrum of technologies available. We are sector agnostic in that particular sense. While we are talking about it now, in the last 2-3 years, we have been talking about also thinking of SINE 2.0, building up on what we have been doing. What we have been able to do over the years is we have about 212 startups, 1,000 plus innovators, entrepreneurs that have worked with us. There are 59 current companies, 93 have graduated. We have our own share of failures, and 48 companies did fold. Large chunk of that is also a contribution of the difficult times that we faced over the last 2-3 years, and 12 companies were merged or acquired. We have been, being an academic sector incubator, we have been a very, very frugal incubator, so to speak. We have put in about $4 million, but to the credit of SINE intervention and the entrepreneurs who have been motivated and passionately working on their ideas, they in turn could raise about 750 million at a collective valuation about 2.5 billion. We can also be extremely proud and boast of a unicorn, the first one from an academic sector incubator, and you will hear the story of that little later in the program of this particular entrepreneur. 200 plus IPs, largely from IIT Bombay. Also IPs have been translated into ventures, and then 5,500 plus employment has been generated as well. So this is what we have done so far, and the journey is still ongoing. Where do we go from here? We are moving into a facility. You can see the picture at the bottom of the table, which is just across the street from here. We will be going probably 3x in terms of space. Naturally, the numbers of incubating companies also can go up. So this kind of event is sort of right platform to tell everybody that the difficulty that we are facing in terms of onboarding people because of lack of space can be addressed at least to some extent in the near future. But Poini and Shaji, I must tell you that you will have to gear up much more, because as I see it, at current strike rate, we would be there already by the end of next year if we maintain this strike rate. This is my prediction, but let's see how it goes. 60 plus offices, 70 plus co-working seats, 70 plus seats in the labs, and a lot of lab facilities are getting created so that deep tech startups can be benefited out of the exercise. While we are working on it, IIT is also aware of this. And one last point that I want to make before I invite our Deputy Director is that IIT has been committed to entrepreneurship. IIT has been recognized as Institute of Eminence, and in that Institute of Eminence funding, which is earmarked for research and taking institute at the next level, Institute has also committed to the entrepreneurship as one of the major activity. And this is first time in IIT's history, perhaps, Professor Rao can correct me if I'm mistaken, that IIT has actually put the money where their mouth is, where their heart is. IIT Bombay has been pioneer in entrepreneurship space, and they have also committed in terms of funding this time. So I'm very happy to announce that the funding which has been earmarked for entrepreneurship side through the SINE, the first call will open on 2nd of May, early next month. There are 4 programs which are going to be lined up, of which EIR fellowship, this is entrepreneur in residence, for students and alumni who are graduating or graduated. They will be supported in terms of stipend or fellowship equivalent. Prototyping grant all the way up to 30 lakhs, women entrepreneurship grant, which is sort of a combination of an EIR plus a prototyping grant at a smaller level, and eventually even the seed funding. Anybody who makes an impact and needs capital to grow quickly, we are also thinking about seed funding through this particular initiative. So I would like to thank the Institute for committing with not just the all spirit, but also in kind, in terms of giving big flip to the entrepreneurship space within IIT Bombay community and ecosystem at large. So this is probably what I wanted to share with you in a very brief idea about the SINE for those of you who are associated with us for the long time. Now I would like to invite Professor Rao, who is our Deputy Director of the Institute, to guide us further on this particular space. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Santosh. A warm good morning to you all. In fact, it is maybe the first time that I am speaking in this kind of forum, because by profession I am a civil engineer, and you know, most of the time civil engineers only do what they are supposed to do. They don't know even the spelling of this entrepreneurship. That was earlier. But now, of course, we also have to look at solving the problems that the infrastructure is throwing at us. And towards that, I am also very happy to see all my young colleagues. They are actually working on creating materials that actually replace the natural materials that we are using, so that we achieve a lot of sustainability in the future. So having said that, I think let me come back to the SINE. So Professor Santosh Garpure has narrated how much they have traveled and what is the future, what future we are looking at. And he also mentioned about thanking the institute that we have actually funded about 10 crore through IOE fund. But there is no need to thank, that is the responsibility of the institute. IIT Bombay, of course, SINE is part of IIT Bombay, and whatever accolades, whatever positive things that we are hearing, so IIT Bombay's name is coming out there, and there is great thing that is happening, and a lot of societal impact is actually happening. So my, of course, connection, I will not say that I have any connection with SINE. So I joined this institute in 1996, but then after several years in front of our department in that lawn, just this our lawn by the side of this PC Saxena auditorium, the quadcopter used to always fly. And so through that only then we inquired what is going on. So then we came to know, that time I think Professor Amarnath was the professor in charge. And then later, after few years or 1 year or 2 years, then we also saw a lot of news items connecting it with even the Three Idiots movie, all that. So then it entered into our mind. Of course, we nowadays civil engineers also use drones, quadcopters for their own data collection and so on. And you all know that now the Idea Forge is about to come up with an IPO. Okay. So that kind of achievement, and we also have Unicorn as well. But the institute, of course, has to do much more, and the institute is doing whatever is required. So what I mean is to create an ecosystem. It's not just only SINE. In order to realize the entire potential of research and innovation that is happening at IIT Bombay, we need to obviously create a good ecosystem. And towards that, I am happy to share with you, we have all the components of that ecosystem. Starting with, of course, very recently, we have instituted this Translational Research Center. And many of the research scholars, the great ideas, they obviously want their PhD to be thesis they submit. But if there is a great idea that can come out and it can be, but it needs some kind of, in order to boost the technology readiness levels, there is some more work that is to be done. But it doesn't mean that only that research scholar has to work on that idea and improve the TRL levels. But it can be taken up by even a BTech student, MTech student, because the idea is already thoroughly researched and all the criticality has already happened, solutions have come out, but we need to take it towards implementation. So towards that, in order to achieve this particular task, we have actually started now Translational Research Center. I think it should become complementary to SINE, what SINE is doing. So it should just boost the technology levels, and then somebody wants to go into a startup, SINE should definitely come into picture. Now similarly, we also have a research park. The building is coming up. Of course, research park is in existence. Even some of the companies which have come out of SINE, they're also actually taken space in our research park. So the companies come here, they co-locate with us, and then they actually participate in our activities like sponsored research, giving internships to students, even advising students about entrepreneurship. That is one of the very important aspects. If they are located in so near, they can actually, the industry experts are so near, so they can actually advise whoever wants to incubate any company, make a startup. So that aspect is very, very important. So similarly, funding, of course, Professor Santosh Garpure talked about funding. So he says for the first time, IIT Bombay directly more or less funded. But of course, we are all aware of this National Innovation and Startup Policy. So even in that policy, for some reason, I do not know why it is dormant. That policy is there on the website. It is 2019. But even sometimes we get a doubt whether it is actually an approved policy or not. But whatever it is, because it is in MOE website, obviously we have to assume that it is approved. And it also says that 1% of the institute's income has to be given to the for this purpose, startup and entrepreneur and innovation purpose. Obviously the SINE is the one. But we are actually started the discussion on that. I am hoping that something would definitely happen. But other than that, we also have DRF, IIT Bombay Development Relations Foundation, where there is a wealth of alumni out there. As on today, we have about 65,000 alumni, and every year we are graduating, adding another 2,500 to 3,000 alumni to that pool, and a lot of interaction is happening. And through donations, DRF raises a lot of money, and of course it supports the overall development of IIT Bombay. That also can support the innovation and entrepreneurship, and also a lot of CSR. Nowadays it is mandated that 2% of CSR has to be go for research, development, society, all that, the 2% of the net profit. So even those funds are actually increasingly coming to our DRF. Okay, so we have a system to take that money and start whatever the company wants, maybe research projects and so on. So this entire ecosystem is right now available at IIT Bombay, and with that I am sure that the SINE is going to get benefited. So we need to actually connect all these units, and then they become complementary to each other. And things will actually happen. And some of you may not be knowing what is IIT Bombay today. So today we have 13,000 students on campus. So it has actually tremendously grown. When I joined this institute, it is less than 3,000, about 2,500 on rolls. But as on today, it is 13,000 students. And as Professor Santosh already told you, out of these 13,000 students, 60% are doing either their master's degree or PhD, and out of this 60%, it is an even split. 30% of them are PhD scholars, and 30% they are doing their masters. And every year, recent convocation, we have graduated 450 PhD scholars. So that actually means that with all this ecosystem, at least out of 450, if not 150, even 50, 100 of them, they are having great innovations. So those have to be translated. Our Translation Research Center can actually work on that and then the SINE can take on from there. So we are hoping that things will even accelerate much more in the near future. So with these few words, I congratulate SINE. They have traveled a long way and the growth is excellent. So entire team, I congratulate them on this occasion of 19th Foundation Day, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Rao, for the encouraging words and for setting context for the day. So before you sit, can I request Professor Garpure to present the token memento from SINE to you? Thank you once again, Professor Rao and Professor Santosh, for sharing your words of wisdom with us. So many of you may not know this, but SINE is the first non-for-profit separate legal entity that IIT Bombay hosted on its campus to lead and promote entrepreneurial activities. The institute has supported SINE in terms of providing not just infrastructure, but intellectual capital through its faculty members, students, alumni network, state-of-the-art labs, prototyping facilities for entrepreneurs, and most importantly, for creating a framework conducive for promoting entrepreneurship and innovation. The successive leadership from IIT Bombay, be it the chairman, the directors, the board members, the faculties in charge for SINE, have contributed immensely for making what SINE is today. Thank you, IIT Bombay. Now, moving on to the next sessions of the day. The first session is titled, Why Not Switch? Student to Entrepreneur Deep Tech Story. Let me give you some context. Back in late 2000s and early 2010s, two separate teams of founders decided to take the road less traveled. They decided to start their respective ventures in the manufacturing segment. Given the ecosystem prevailing at that point in time, like 20 years back, 15, 20 years back in manufacturing, it was indeed an audacious vision to build a company with a hardware product. Sometimes it is told you need to be hardwired to start a hardware startup in India. They not only built their respective companies, but also gained leadership positions in their product domains. I'm talking about Atomberg and IdeaForge, and I will just give you a context as to why our session is titled, Why Not Switch? Any guesses? The switch on, okay. Okay, so why not is the tagline for Atomberg. So if many of you have seen, because Atomberg is now a household name, and Switch is the UAV, the brand name of the unmanned aerial vehicle that IdeaForge manufactures. So that's a small story behind the title. But now moving on to the main story, the session will be moderated by Professor Arindrajit Chaudhary, a faculty member in the Mechanical Engineering Department at IIT Bombay, and also Professor is a co-founder of a deep tech company called InSpacity, startup recently incubated at SINE in the space tech domain. So I would like to invite you to the dais. So Professor will be in conversation with, firstly, I'll invite Shibam Das, co-founder of Atomberg Technologies. Shibam is co-founder and COO of Atomberg, He's an alumnus of IIT Bombay, batch of 2012, Biotech in Civil Engineering. He has been recognized by Forbes India 30 under 30, along with his co-founder, Manoj Meena. He was also featured in Forbes Asia and has been awarded by Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship as a national winner. Now, talking about Atomberg, what started as a small team of young graduates at IIT Bombay has now transformed into a household name. They manufacture India's most energy efficient ceiling fan using super efficient BLDC motor technology, which consumes 28 watt power, which is 65% less power compared to ordinary fans consuming around 75 to 80 watt power. Next, I would also like to invite Ankit Mehta. He's the CEO and co-founder of IdeaForge Technologies. Again, an alumnus of IIT Bombay, batch of 2005, dual degree in mechanical engineering. He's also a recipient of Young Alumnus Achiever Award at IIT Bombay. IdeaForge are the pioneers of unmanned aerial vehicles in India. They are the market leader in defense and homeland security in the UAV segment with more than 90% market share in India. And as you've heard, they have recently filed for an IPO. One more short thing about the title. Why not switch? If you read in totality, they are posing us, the entrepreneurs are posing this question, why not switch from being job seekers to job creators? Over to you, Professor.
All right. Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for the warm introductions. I would also like to thank SINE for inviting all of us to have a candid chat here. And I really hope at the end of this, we have quite a bit of material to take home with, especially the young entrepreneurs who are sitting in the audience or listening in, right? So that would be my perspective from here. Now, because this is Science Day also, so I thought about how to honor SINE in some way. And the only thing I could think about is, as a tagline, we talk about necessity being the mother of invention, right? In IIT Bombay, my gut feeling is that SINE is the mother of invention in some way, right? Whoever has had ideas, right. Whoever has had ideas that are worth pursuing and pursuing hard, SINE has always been there to handhold them, taking them through, procedural challenges, because at the end of the day, IIT Bombay is still semi-autonomous, and there are challenges, as Professor Rao knows. And they have been there to kind of smooth the pathways for those kind of people. Everybody is hardwired to build hardware. But at the end of the day, if the system shuts you down, then there is nothing you can do. So the SINE team has always been there from the very inception, I imagine, to handhold people like that. And that is the story that we want to kind of unfold as the talk progresses. Just out of curiosity, how long do we have? Half an hour. All right, it's plenty. Right. Okay, so let me start at the beginning. And who is senior, by the way? So we'll go by. All right, so we'll go by juniors first. Right. Okay. All right. So when you are in college, you're just goofing around. You're talking about these ideas at the staff canteen or the college canteen, late night hours. You're scribbling things on the maybe bathroom wall, and you're trying to talk about things. How did it progress from there into something that you felt that you can pursue with real aggression? So I'll start with Shibam.
Hello. Hi, everyone. So I think, first of all, thank you for having me here. And it's a great privilege and a great feeling, to share. We used to be sitting here like 10 years back. And thank you to Poi ma'am and the entire science support team. I think, in the early days, they have supported us a lot when it was required. And I think our success, we owe a lot to the entire SINE system. Now, coming to this question, I think, so our journey started in 2011. Officially, we incubated the company in 2012, somewhere 17th April. And I think in the early days, This was like our 4th year, where Manoj got placement in ISRO. I also got some placement. And there were this feeling that, we will create, I will say Manoj and Mohan, they wanted to actually build some engineering company, but there was no clear idea or directions to it. But there was some feeling that, we want to do something else. And with that feeling, the company was started. But I think the entire idea or how we evolved to this idea, etc., that's a long journey. And if I talk about Atomberg's journey, I can probably, split it into 2 or 3 phases. The first phase is 2012 to 2015. That's the first phase. And a lot has happened in those 4 years. I think we started with one big ambition that we wanted to create an engineering company, global engineering company out of India. That was the very broad vision. And then we started with one idea. We developed one small product for, to meet the unmet need of IIT Bombay professors. And then one idea after another idea started failing. The first idea failed. The second idea failed. The third idea failed. The fourth idea failed. And when this idea fails, the problem is basically every time one idea fails, your confidence goes down by 1 degree, right? And the support system which was there, your family, friends, peer group, right? Their confidence also start a little bit, shaking down. And then combined with this, the financial pressure. So there was one point in time I remember, I think almost for 8-9 months, there was not enough money to even afford a house in Mumbai. So we used to stay in the same, Crescent building, and we used to go to canteen, and in canteen also we used to get credit from the canteen guy for dal khichdi. And so I think for almost 6 months the menu was fixed, dal khichdi and one mishti doi. And we never used to pay rent to SINE. So they also supported in that 6 months phase. And combined with this peer pressure, because your friends are doing quite well, right? So they're earning in lakhs and lakhs, and they can go to parties and every weekend, and you just can't afford a beer. So all of that is, that pressure is there. And yeah, so I think those 4 years were very difficult. We kept on changing one idea after another. Eventually then 2015, we figured out this fan as an opportunity, and everyone was surprised. Everyone started questioning, how will you compete with Havells, Crompton, who are already so big, their balance sheet is so large. So yeah, I think then that happens for a very short period of 2 years. Things were quite positive. We raised a couple of crore. We're like, we just saw 1 crore in our account in one day, and we're like, just jumping out of the chair. And then we realized that in 3-4 months, the 1 crore is gone. And then we again wanted to raise another 6-7 crore. That also we raised, fortunately, very quickly. And then in 2017, 2018, we thought now it's time to go big, and we wanted to raise a larger round. We thought we'll raise maybe Series A, 40-50 crore. And we thought, in 6 months, maybe we should be able to raise the round, because whenever we talk to founders, they said, typically you should budget for 6 to 9 months to raise capital. And we started with great enthusiasm, made a list of 100 investors, started talking to them. Then after 3 months, they come back with an answer, yes, no, whatever it is, or the feedback, right? And we started getting rejected from all of them, right? So every 3 months, after every 3 months, every week, one investor comes to us saying that, we truly believe that you are doing a great job, but we can't support you. And, we want to,
That must have hurt quite a bit.
100 times at least. So yeah, I think that's again is a phase, which is the most difficult phase. And probably in that 2 years phase, we have seen multiple points, multiple instances come where we're supposed to just about to give up and just somehow just get pulled out of it. So I think so when everything was not right, then in 2018, somewhere after 9-10 months, we got one interest from a Chinese VC, right? Not from, not a single Indian VC wanted to bet. So one Chinese VC wanted to bet on us, right? And we're very positive. We thought, so Manoj bought a car in hoping that the money will come in. I also thought I'll get married. So what happened is, when we actually are supposed to sign the agreement, Indian government put a sanction on the Chinese money, right? And everything again fell off.
That was horrible, I'm
So,
sure.
Yeah, I think we are just celebrating that 15, 20 days we'll get money, and then everything again went back. But again, we started doing our business as usual. Maybe 3-4 months down the line, we got another interest from a strategic investor, not direct, but indirect strategic investor. And fortunately, at that point in time, I was getting married. So just before the marriage, I think I just signed the term sheet. And once I come back from marriage, I just realized that the deal is no more. And now you have one more liability of the families. So that happened. And there was one point in time, then we realized that maybe we need to just close down business. That is because the business is scaling up. They're doing 2 crore a month kind of business. The requirement is huge. We have failed multiple times. We have got 1 or 2 small blick of hope, and that also just faded away. And then one day, I think maybe me and Manoj decided that it's time to now figure out how to wind up things. The 100, 200 employees into liabilities and all this stuff. Very difficult time, right? Very difficult, stressful time, I will say. And yeah, I think out of just curiosity, we just came to, we're just reading one article. And we just came to know that ex-Sequoia MDs left Sequoia to start their own venture. That was the only one fund that we didn't reach out. And they usually used to bet 70, 80 crores, and we're all recommend 30, 40 crores. I just wrote a LinkedIn message to him, and with no hope that he will come back ever, because no one replies on LinkedIn. You get hundreds of messages on LinkedIn, right? But yeah, fortunately, he replied, and that eventually converted into a deal. So that's how I think journey happened. And then after that, we started scaling up. Now I think fast forward, if I let's look at now 3 years down the line after we raised the first round of capital from them, I think we just did 100 crore a month in revenue last month.
Congratulations,
and, hopefully we'll cross 1,000 crore this financial year revenue, and I think things are now much better shape. I think
awesome,
I took long.
No. I mean, I would have crossed through all of these, but I understand the flow of how things happened, and when you reminisce about these struggles, right? It's kind of a rolling hill, and you kind of continue along that line. All right. I will come back, yeah, right. So to pass it on, you heard about ideas failing, and I think in some way it is similar to metallurgy, where you need to kind of look through and beat a particular tool down, let's say a sword. You need to forge it, and you need to quench it, forge it again, and you need to beat it up so that it can withstand this kind of a pressure. And then only if you pursue this through, if you give up, then the blade breaks, right? But if you pursue through, you have something, that can basically take on the entire world. And then the world also kind of conspires to get you this, right? All right, so absolutely. Going from, ideas failing to getting forged and moving on to idea forge. So what was your experience in terms of starting from the, hostel rooms and moving into, higher echelons of life, right?
So, my journey, I think I'm a little bit slightly more privileged in the sense that we sort of knew when we were graduating what we want to do. When I was a kid, I used to get a lot of ideas, and somehow it struck to me that maybe engineering is a way to implement those ideas, right? And one evening, my dad and my uncle were discussing that IIT Bombays are the best, IITs are the best engineering colleges in the country. So that spark sort of, said that, okay, I want to go to IITs. So when I finally got the privilege of joining IIT Bombay, I felt that I've come here to actually work on my ideas. And the next few years, I personally spent implementing a lot of my ideas. And IIT Bombay is such an amazing ecosystem. Like, I can't thank IIT Bombay enough for being the institute it is, because in those days, I did not spend a single penny from my pocket implementing my ideas. And I used to go to our faculty in mechanical engineering, and I used to tell them that I have this idea sketched on a rough sheet of paper. And I would tell them that I've done the math, and I'll probably need, it started with 3,000 rupees. Of which I spent 1,500, and I got that reimbursed. And I went to the next faculty because faculties can't take a lot of money out of their projects, right, easily. So, and that there was no formal way of doing this at that time. So I went to the next. I went to the same one again, and this time I was asking 15,000. So obviously that didn't materialize. So he said that not me, go to somebody else. I went to somebody else, and it's just one privilege after another. And every time I would hop to a faculty, I would still be able to raise money, and more often than not, it had nothing to do with their subject, right? I mean, it was just that there's a student who has an idea, he's seeking money, and they would just give it, right? I mean, I'm so amazed at this institution. And finally, when after the fourth faculty, everyone got exhausted with me coming up with more ideas, I was directed to Professor Amarnath, who was leading this innovation cell at IIT Bombay, the U Mashruwala Innovation Cell. That was the first time that I found a home where, I had a constant sort of source of funding for my ideas. So I was very happy after that. And I felt that, maybe there are more, cranky people along with me who want to do this. And the innovation cell was such a beautiful concept. I felt that we should promote it. And we started taking these sessions along with another friend of mine for all the students in IIT Bombay. And that's how my co-founders sort of saw me or met me for the first time. In fact, one of my co-founders and co-promoters now, Rahul Singh, he's also a mechanical engineering graduate. He came up to me one of those sessions in 2003, I believe. And he said, Ankit, I want to make a hovercraft and float it in the Powai Lake. And he had this brilliant idea that I want to take all the leftover bikes. I'll scrape out, one evening in the night, just like we used to do. I don't know whether we do it now or not. PAF में जो हम करते थे, बैम्बू चुराना, वैसे ही हम इंजन चुराने की बातें कर रहे थे उसमें कि हम जाएंगे रात में, इंजन खोलेंगे और निकाल के I will fix the engine and we'll make a hovercraft and float it in the Powai Lake. It was such a fascinating idea, right? And it not just gripped gripped his imagination, it gripped my imagination as well. And I told him that let's build a few prototypes in a lab, and this is 2003-4 time frame, and fortunately faculty was kind enough to give me a lab space because of the work I used to do within the department. And I was one afternoon we sat in the lab, we built a bunch of hovercraft prototypes, and we realized that Innovation Cell will not fund it because there was no patent to be filed. And Innovation Cell had this concept that you have to file a patent, potentially, at least when you start the project, right? So we went on to wanting to build an innovative helicopter after that. And it couldn't be just a helicopter because radio control flying, if anyone has done like dime a dozen, it's available. Even then it used to be available very easily. So we realized that we need to come up with something innovative, and that's when we sort of independently came up with the idea of a quadcopter. And we felt that we've changed the aviation world, not knowing that it was changed 60 years back and had failed even then, right? But that excitement got us to building our first prototype for a competition in 2004. So that's how our journey started. I graduated in 2005, and I worked for 6 months, and just so that I could earn enough for the next 6. And then after a year, we got incubated at SINE. In the form of SINE, we got the most patient landlord, is what I say. I don't think we ever paid our rent on time.
The tradition continues.
Is it?
Yeah, so I get these messages that you have not paid this month's dues. So I try to bundle up and then pay in one go.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but I think I've been fortunate to know what we wanted to do. Of course, we did not start with this as our core business. We actually started making these hand crank chargers for portable electronics, and that was because I'd filed a patent when I was a student on an idea of mine on an energy device, and we thought that quote unquote tick mark metrics for a startup, right? You need to have an idea that is defensible, so you need to have an IP, whatever. So we thought that maybe we should start with this because we have a patent, and then maybe we'll move on to other things. So that's how we started, and eventually had to quote unquote pivot, and not 4 times, but fortunately for us once, but that stuck with us. Yeah. So
All
that's how
right,
the journey
awesome,
was.
awesome. I think, so we have time. All right, all right. Okay, so I think Shibam already talked about some of the, more challenging aspects of his business in terms of how things kind of look dark at times. Your ideas also had to do quite a bit of defense, inclination, and we all know that defense is kind of a behemoth that does not move at times, right? Did you face these kind of challenges that you're trying to sell this to defense or to armed forces and nobody's responding and things are looking despondent? Any such anecdotes?
No,
or
so
any such
I mean, I've
learnings?
just highlighted the part where we were fortunate to know what we want to do, not the part that we were extremely unfortunate to want to do it.
Oh boy, maybe, yeah.
Because I think hardware was unheard of. I have this, I have this expression that I use every time these days, is that for any entrepreneur event that we used to go at that point in time, we were like the tiger out of a cage in a zoo, right? Everyone would come to the zoo wanting to see the tiger, but if it's out of the cage, nobody wants to come near it, right? So that's who we were for a long period of time. I think I've had VC events where people have stood up from the audience and said, "I have goosebumps on my hand to see what you've done," but we would never get funded, never. Like so, I think it's been. I mean, I famously tell this, that we've had those "am I about to die" moments maybe 30 times in the last 15 years. So it's just a state you start living with over a period of time, and again, deep privilege of everyone who's come and supported from time to time to keep this alive, be it needing debt, be it actual venture funding. It's been a hard journey. It's been massively hard journey, but I think one thing that keeps you doing it is that you believe either in the opportunity or you believe in wanting to do this for a very long time.
Yeah, that is one of the things I wanted to ask, when chips are down, what is prodding you along, right? So I think you answered very nicely. Shibam, you would want to, contribute to this as to, you are here and things are looking so good now, right? And in the middle, things were looking so dark so many times. What kept you alive, right, about this?
Not that I thought about it in the past, but as I think aloud, I think two things that helps definitely. So let's say if I analyze, so one for sure is somewhere there is a feeling that how can you give up so early? Now it can be an individual characteristic, it can be comes with certain environmental things, etc. But so I think there is one core belief what Anjika also mentioned in Attenberg was that we wanted to build that engineering-led global company, right? That was in our mind, right? And so idea kept on changing, but that core vision of creating a tech-driven company or engineering-driven company, that was always there, right? So that always pushed us to move forward, to try one more time, to just give it one more day. And so I think that one thing of be very convinced about why you want to do it, right? So when we started our journey of Attenberg, right, we never thought it is going to be an easy journey, right? So we were very clear about our expectations, right? And I think that also we have realized that let's say 4 ideas we tried and we failed, right? But one idea that we eventually scaled, that also have seen multiple failures, but we didn't pivot on that 5th idea, right? And if we want to understand why it happened, I think the answer lies on being very realistic about your milestones, right? So for each of the first 4 ideas, we are not very convinced about the opportunity. We thought let's try it and let's figure out what is the opportunity is about. But on the 5th idea, we knew exactly what exactly we wanted to achieve. So we never very realistic on setting the milestones right? And when we achieve those milestones, right, then we know internally that no matter what the external people are saying or no matter what investors are saying, but we know we achieved what we wanted to achieve. That was not the case in the first 4 ideas. And that really kept on pushing us one step.
That's very good. Yeah. All right. So to kind of diversify the thought process, now that we see that IIT Bombay has believed that this is a journey that their students can take, you are like the trailblazers in all of this. You can see the money now rolling in from different schemes. What advice would you give to both students and faculty as to how to think about their journey here onward, now that the ecosystem is more conducive? Right? You have gone through literally, fire. Let me not use bad words. Right? You have gone through fires to kind of come to this state. What advice would you like to say in a condensed way that both faculty and students can think about entrepreneurship in a different light? Is there anything specific? Because I'm also eagerly waiting to listen to this part as a faculty. Right?
No, I think advices are very contextual, right? So it's very difficult to give broad advices to anyone. I mean, some of this change depending on the context. But a couple of things. So I think one is a lot of founders ask me about, how to raise capital. Right? That's a common question that everyone asks, and then they say, what to pitch to investors. And I think in that journey, I have realized a couple of things. So one thing is that before even figuring out how to raise capital, you should always ask this question that why you need that capital, right? And the moment you are very clear about why you need that capital, it's 60-70%, not 100%. You know what is the right form of capital you should attract, whether it is debt, whether it is equity. So for example, let's say I am a hardcore medical device company, right? And let's say I have a 10 years life in terms of developing the product because of some certification, some legal thing. Now, if I try to attract an VC money whose life is 5-6 years, I will never be able to get that money. But at the end of 9th year, maybe I can get VC money. So, and having that clarity of why you need capital and for what exactly will give you an idea of what kind of capital you should attract. Now, there are enough options available. SINE has like grant options. So, grant, etc., can be right for that. So, that is one. Second, I think, a lot of founders think, VC is an external stakeholder, right? And that is not the case, right? Eventually, VCs and your interests are aligned, right? Your investors and your interests are aligned. Now, I have seen founders, when you think about raising capital, they will do some Google work and come out with a very large market size, right? Now, it doesn't work that way, right? I mean, VCs are very smart. They're not going to believe that, you said it's a $100 billion market size, so that means $100 billion market size, right? So, you need to be very convinced about what you're talking about. So I think, and once they're also onboarded, right, then also the journey of running the business together becomes much easier if both of you are aligned on what you want to achieve. And if you can maintain from day one of attracting investors, that's all of this. That is another thing that I would probably,
Synergy in every aspect is very much necessary.
Just treat VC as another shareholder, another co-founder, right? And then everything becomes very simple, much more easier as we scale up.
I think, when it comes to starting something, I think, if our journeys are any example to go by, I think there should be a lot of conviction behind what you're doing. I think, when chips are high and you're getting external capital, it's all well and good and you can sustain through some really, stupid ideas can get sustained for a very long time because you have capital available freely. But ultimately, business and the real world catches up. And when that catches up, does your idea and your conviction have enough depth to stay the distance? I think that's something which is extremely important to know that, you will be there for that idea. When chips are down. I think that's something which is very important. The second part which is important, I believe, is that a lot of times, we start off building something for everything or everybody. I don't think that's, a great way to start a journey, right? I mean, in order to sort of display a very large total addressable market, we tend to want to build something for everybody. And I think, there are enough examples out there where going narrow and solving niche problems, but solving them really well, is actually sometimes a pathway that unlocks a much wider market. I remember from Atomberg's own journey, right? They started off delivering these fans to industries initially, and solving the problem for them to save cost. And we've been a beneficiary of that cost. In fact, we used to be their showcase customers. We were right across the street, our offices, and I think solving that one problem really well helps you sustain a business, survive a
I
business.
think that
right?
might
Really
be the
matters.
takeaway. I mean, at the end of the day, if you are diversifying too much at the very beginning with very little capital, where you don't have money to eat, right? What are you doing? So you better focus very strongly on something and build that to be something that is world class. And then automatically you'll get more capital to build more things.
Absolutely. And I think the other distinction that is very critical, in my opinion, is knowing that why is a product selling. A product has to sell for its merit. It has to sell for the difference it makes to the end customer, rather than because you can today with a lot of money discount it for the end customer and he probably doesn't care whether it gives full value or not. He just cares that he's getting something cheap, right?
Or
I think that distinction is very important.
As a researcher, you think that is the best product that you have made, right? So people should automatically line up to buy it, right? Which lot of faculty or
Yeah, I
students
think-
might think,
Yeah, more often than not, we as engineers want to complicate things. We want to give the best technology and we keep building technology, and then when we go in the real world, people don't want to pay that much value for that technology. So you really are stuck that I have put so much effort, I built something so good, and why is this guy not understanding the value of what I built, right? But at that point in time, he wanted to eat only a sliver of that at a very, very small price probably, that he can give value to, because his operations don't need such complicated model that we've built. So as a so the difference between a researcher and an entrepreneur, or an engineer and an entrepreneur, is basically knowing when to, so what is the bite that the customer is willing to eat and pay for, right? And building on that pie is extremely important.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I think, I will open it up for questions. Yes, please.
Great. Am I audible? So great presentation, great discussion on the journey. My name is Sandeep Sharma. I am the founder CEO of our organization, which is HiSave. We are backed by MasterCard, RuPay, ICICI. My question to Shibam is, while I was introduced by the lady, she is also a very avid fan of your product, that your product is great. So I thought you are only in Mixi. So I looked at some of these product, which was very well displayed in Amazon and other stuff. My only question is that India being a very price sensitive market, where the price of the commodity is seen under a magnifying glass, and your product is not one of the cheapest. So what was the barrier you faced from Indian consumer as far as cost is concerned? And how did you highlight the value which they would get even after paying a higher amount?
I mean, it's not a short answer. It's a
Shibam, is it okay if I ask you to take this offline? The reason why I'm saying is that I would want to enthuse as many, he's right here, right
no,
after
I will
this.
just probably add just one line to it,
Yes.
and detail we can discuss later. I guess one insight that I would like to share with all of you is that what Ankit also mentioned is India is not a price sensitive market. India is a value conscious market. Right now, that means if you can demonstrate your value, people will buy. The question lies in saying that the art is how do you demonstrate value. Now that depends on how do you segment your market, how do you go one level deeper. For example, what Ankit mentioned, when we developed the first product, the value was energy efficiency. Now that is more relevant for consumer who has hundreds and thousands of fans, right? Not let's say 1 or 2 fans, because the saving is very high. So we targeted with B2B institutions. As we moved a little bit, let's say, for journey, we realized that a consumer buys a product based on efficiency, look, smartness. There are 4, 5, 6 more parameters. So we ensure that our product is superior on all of those 5, 6 aspects. Energy efficiency became one of those aspects, right? So that's how we need to go one level deeper in all of this question to answer some of that. But very broadly, it is value conscious segment. You need to demonstrate how to value. For that, you need to know who your customer is, and that's how you need to go one level deeper, one at a time.
I stand corrected. Yeah, I mean, this was indeed interesting. But I think you can continue this in a longer run, right? Yeah, continue, please.
So I am one of your
Thank you.
So like you rightly pointed out, when I went and I was building my house, one of the things that I spoke to the people, and they did not sell your product to me. I actually saw, a standee there saying Attenberg, and me and my husband were quite inquisitive, and we said, okay, energy efficiency likha hua hai, thoda explain kariye. Somewhere do you feel that your market potential is much higher, but because your advocates are really not out there selling that product proactively, is one part that you have a lot more market to explore. That's one, because it was the other way around. I was pushing the guy to explain to me and give me the brochure and tell me, so that energy efficiency really stood out. Secondly, I'm sending you a LinkedIn request, so I'm hoping that you will accept it. And Ankit, to you, thank you very much. As a co-founder, my partner and I, we're working on an idea. We're about to launch it in about 2 months' time. And what you rightly pointed out about niche segment. We were initially, it was a larger pyramid. We were at the base of the pyramid. We were trying to address a lot of things at the same time. But we kind of narrowed our funnel, and we said, no, we need to first find out that niche, and in the content marketing platform scenario, and then do a lift and shift model. So I think, thank you very much for sharing that, because it kind of endorses further our thought and belief. But my question to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think LinkedIn, yes, I will accept.
Shivam, I think we are anyways running short on time. Okay, if you could also, I think they're both next to, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry?
We'll stop. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll stop at this moment and we'll move on to the. Pardon me. Yeah. All right. Okay, so yeah, over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shivam, and thank you again.
So sorry.
To the speakers as well as the moderator. Three entrepreneurs who have shared the stories of grit, being tested by fire, and to emerge victorious. Thank you so much for this extraordinary, motivating session. So we move to session 2, story number 2 rather. In it for the long haul, a unicorn story. So this will be a hybrid session. We have Vishal here, who will be in conversation with Birud, who is in the US. Just a little bit of context again. Hi Birud. So there are 100 plus unicorns in India. But what is special about Gupshup was that when they became unicorn in 2021, we were, all of us were working from home, and then we got this news on our SINE WhatsApp group, and that, excited all of us that they were in fact the first unicorn from an academic incubator in India. That made all of us proud and made the incubator community visible in the ecosystem. So Birud, thank you for, inspiring all of us, and you continue to do that. Just a quick introduction about Birud. He is co-founder and CEO of Gupshup, alumnus of IIT Bombay, batch of 1991, Biotech in computer science. Gupshup is a unicorn, as I mentioned, and they provide conversational messaging platform for businesses for enabling better customer engagement. Prior to founding Gupshup, Birud founded Alliance, today called as Upwork, which got listed at NASDAQ in 2018. He has been awarded the Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIT Bombay for his contribution in the entrepreneurial world. And Birud will be in conversation with Vishal. Vishal is co-founder and CEO of Seclor, alumnus of IIT Bombay, batch of 2001, BTech in electrical engineering. And Seclor provides a data security platform for digital asset protection and control. They have been recognized as 50 fastest technology growing companies by Deloitte, and have expanded to more than 22 countries with more than 2 million users on their platform. Vishal, over to you, and Virud.
Thanks a lot. Birud, can you hear us? Hello. Hey, hi Birud, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thanks a lot for joining this session. And welcome everyone. My name is Vishal. We already, of course, Birud needs no introduction, but still got one, so that's good. Birud, let's start with early education and what led to you even starting up the company, which used to be called SMS Gupshup. That's how I know it, but now it's just called Gupshup, right? So talk through maybe the couple of years before Gupshup started.
Sure. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. I'm sorry to be towering over you.
You're towering over us in more ways than one.
All right, that's not what I was going to say. I was actually on campus literally less than a month ago. So I'm here in the Bay Area. I visit frequently, but I could not be there today. I'd like to be there in person. I think, okay, you asked about Gupshup, right? Getting started. In fact, exactly. Gupshup got started in SINE before this. Okay, or maybe SINE was just an idea in maybe EV Biotech's head. And at that time, but there was no facilities, so he told us, "Hey, look, just use my office." It was in the Crescent building or something, and then he just sort of started in his space, and then later on when SINE, they had a proper space, and I think, Pointy will remember all the crazy stories where we had one room and then we expanded into cover all the space that there was in SINE, and then at some point they kicked us out, saying, "Okay, enough, you're disrupting our whole operation." So anyway, good problems to have, lots of fond memories and so on. But coming to the question you asked around the specific idea and so on, I mean, I wish I could tell you that there was like a blinding moment of insight and we have this perfect idea and it's scaled up and so on, right? It's actually really, startup geometry or entrepreneurial geometry is different from the one we learn in middle school, which is that the shortest path to success is actually a crooked line in startup world, right? So we've had a lot of pivots. We started, in fact, some of you may remember the name Weberu, right? That's what it was called in, I think, 2004 or 5 when we started at SINE. And it was just this crazy idea of the offline web that, long story short, just didn't work, right? It just failed. And we went back to the drawing board and say, okay, how do we, what's working, what is something new that we can focus on. And at that time, the mobile revolution was happening, albeit it was all feature phones, right? But we saw the power of SMS as a way to reach billions of new users. And I think that's what we started with. We created sort of this social network, which is kind of like Twitter at the same time as Twitter, which was also inspired by SMS. So anyway, that's how we got started. And even there, that initial idea didn't work, and then we pivoted from a consumer model to an enterprise model. So it's just our initial story is just a story of false starts, semi-successes, successes and failures, but always failing forward until sort of we ended up with where we are, and I'll tell you more about it.
Sure.
So like I said, lots of twists and turns, not quite a straight line.
And nearly what 19 years on, can you do a timeline walkthrough of pivots interlaid with funding history, right? I think that'll be an interesting timeline view of the struggles and travails that you went through.
Yeah, I think, look, to be honest, the fortunate thing we had going for us, right, was that my co-founder Rakesh Mathur and me, right, we were both repeat entrepreneurs. And as a repeat entrepreneur, investors will give you the benefit of doubt, right? They're like, okay, you've done it once, you know how to do it. So even if it's not struggling, maybe we got people cut us more slack. They would be willing to do that, right? So I think we had raised, we basically in that period from 2004 to 2010 or 11 actually, we did about 5 rounds. They were all $10 million each, and like I said, right? I mean, so the seed round was just before we did anything, but then once, I mean, it was roughly every 1.5 or 2 years, right?
Right.
And I think so. Even I guess the point is, and then maybe the lesson for someone to take is, it's okay to fail, right? Failure in and of itself, or something you tried didn't work is okay, but so long as you can explain, what you learned from it, what didn't work, how you turned around or switched around, and if you can articulate sort of the next thing that you're focused on, right? I mean, that's what people are looking for, because no entrepreneur can guarantee success, so to speak, right? But what you can guarantee is like a thoughtful and a deliberate approach that you're learning, you're observing, you're adjusting and adapting to the market.
So those were the initial years from what you tell us, access to fair amount of capital, and also did you say a lot of pivots in this 2004 to 2011 period?
Yeah, like I said, right, maybe what was it, two pivots really, right? So we did the web rule thing that failed, and we did the SMS gupshup that we had to pivot again to the enterprise models. Like there were 2 pivots, and we did, and it wasn't like funding was abundant, because don't forget, right? You had the 2008 market crash, the financial crisis.
Right.
Now, sometimes it's just better to be lucky than smart, right? We closed a $10 million funding round literally in the August of 2008, and in September, the markets collapsed.
Got it.
So but that allowed us to continue building on the product and things like that, and then we did another round in 2010 and 2011. So it wasn't easy funding environment either, but I think between Rakesh and I, we had enough relationships or credibility to be able to do that, right? So it doesn't make it any easier, right? Just because somebody knows you doesn't mean they're going to give you.
It's probably worse.
Yeah, and you feel like a stronger sense of obligation, right? When it's not working and so on.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think at least maybe that's, in that sense, Silicon Valley is a little more forgiving than India is, where certainly out here, I mean, even if you fail, but you've had some great learning experiences, it actually makes you a better entrepreneur to receive funding, because you know what not to do, for example, right?
Right.
Also
and can you continue that through from 2010 or 11? Was there a lot of capital that you raised from there on, and were there many pivots from there on?
Oh no, actually, so we raised 10 million in 2011, and then for 10 years we had no funding at all, right? I think either, I don't know, for a variety of reasons, right? I think so what happened, we were doing this SMS gupshup thing, which was, like I said, a consumer product, SMS based. It was both super successful and I mean, there was like the agony and the ecstasy, if you will, right? Which is, on the one hand, it was successful. It grew to 70 million users at a time where Facebook and Twitter had less than 1 million each in India. But on the other hand, we were paying for all of those SMS messages, and it was like 4 billion messages a month, right? And we were subsidizing it. So the problem was it was too expensive to subsidize, and we couldn't monetize for some regulatory reasons. And so it's sort of, on the one hand, you build an enormously successful product. On the other, you can't. The business model didn't work. So that pivot was more like, okay, how can we keep the technology, the part that's working, and change the part that's not, right? So we said, okay, who can pay for it? Can we get enterprises to pay for it? And eventually, yeah, I mean, the big banks and the big e-commerce companies and so on, they could all pay for it. So that was the pivot. But even there, right? So we raised about $10 million, but we kind of had a near-death experience, right? We were close to within 3 months of not making payroll. But in all of those moments, I mean, look, you can't. There's certain things you can't control, but you focus on the things you can, and building product, selling to customers, growing revenues, and so on. And there were also some regulatory curveballs, right, or disruptions that came along, but we were able to. We struggled with a lot of it, right? So I think maybe 2012 or 13 was the low point, but after that, I mean, because what happened was, even doing these pivots, right? It sounds short and simple, but it's not like one fine day you wake up and switch, right? You kind of have to scale back what you were doing, ramp up what you're working on. So you're still spending a lot even as you're making this transition. But I think we were able to sort of navigate this low point, and after that, of course, it's ramped up since then, right? So. Yeah, for 10 years.
Talk to us about what was the mental shift that you and the rest of the exec team had to go through between the first, let's say, 7 years and the next 10 years, because these look like very different journeys, right? In these two phases, were there just different people that you had to get, or how did you rewire your own and the other people around you, their thinking?
Yeah, I think it was, very, very different skill sets, very different technologies, and so on, right? And I think what happens is, I think ultimately some people self-select, right? So I think, see, when you're doing a pivot, the hard thing is, firstly, you are struggling with it yourself as an entrepreneur, right? You're saying, wait a minute, what I thought until yesterday would work is not working. Now, how do I adjust? And firstly, your own psychology, right? You can't have too much of your personal identity tied to something that doesn't work, right? Because I think, I think this is where it's very different from when you're in college and you work hard and you're smart and, you get the best grades and life is good. Well, in startup world, you can be smart and you can work hard, do all the right things, and you could still fail, right? Because it could be either customers don't like it, or it could be competitors, or some technology shift happens, and so on. There's lots of factors beyond your control. So the first thing in a pivot is really just managing your own psychology, which is saying, yes, it didn't work, but that doesn't mean, I'm any less, or I've lost the touch, or any of that, right? You kind of have to go back to the drawing board saying, okay, what didn't work? Why did it not work? How do we sort of modify it? That's the first part. The second part is taking your team along, like, to your question. And even that's hard, because they're going through their own thoughts and they're second guessing. And then they're asking, wait a minute, we followed what you said until yesterday and that didn't work. Why should we follow you now? Right? And that's where I think as a founder, you kind of have to be authentic or vulnerable, even saying, look, you're right. I mean, it didn't work out, but we are learning from it. Here's what we thought would work. Here's what the why. You to do that sort of post-mortem in a kind of honest and candid way. And then, and here's why we're going to focus on the new thing or a different thing, and where it'll take us. So I think in that process, some people, I mean, you might lose some people, and I guess that's okay. Right, and some people may just not be able to adjust, and you might need to ask them to leave, right? But once you made that switch, I mean, you really need to align with the new strategy. And there's this phrase called disagree and commit, right? So you don't want constant debates or reopen. I mean, you go through that process, but at some point you have to say, okay, look, this is what we are doing, and then you just get on with it. So yeah, it's not, it's particularly challenging managing, like I said, your own psychology and your team and carrying them along. On the flip side, I'll say this, right? The people who are with you, I mean, these are very, very strong relationships that you'll form. They'll build a lot of resiliency, and they'll carry the company through all future challenges as well. So a lot of people at Gupshup, in fact, they've stayed on for, the last 12, 14 years through all the twists and turns. And in fact, now really swear by, there's a very high degree of trust and confidence and this resiliency, saying no matter what the market throws at us now, we can deal with it, right? So I think, and you need that, I think that helps, right? So that's the silver lining of a dark cloud, right? Because doing a pivot is a lot harder than it sounds, and it takes a lot longer with a lot more effort and pain.
Yeah, kudos to you, Birut, and the team for sticking around. What does the near-term future look like for Gupshup? Meaning, okay, I'll tell you my interactions. I've lived in the Powai area for most of the last 20 years, and by virtue of that, a lot of your employees have been my neighbors or building mates, right, and so on. So all of this Hirandani, Lake Homes area is all full of Gupshup employees. Most of the buzz around the company has been in the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, right? And I don't know if that's commercial success or just better brand awareness and so on. I've known about the company for most of its life, if not all, and so on. So what has sticked in these last 3, 4, maybe 5 years, or is just my perception of living in Powai?
No, I think things have certainly changed. So let me explain, right? I think, and I'll give a slightly broader answer and come to the specific question. We talk about grit and resilience and sticking with an idea and so on, right? But I want to put a slight caveat to it. It's not like you want blind stubbornness, right? Saying I'm just not going to give up and I'm just going to continue at it, because sometimes an idea might really just be a dead end. I mean, it's a bad idea and it's not going to work, and you just need to give up at least on the idea and perhaps even on the company, because if you can't raise new funding, then even the company have to give up, because it might make sense to go do the next thing, start with a clean slate, pick a new project and so on. I think in our case, when we persevered through this long period of no funding and the challenges and so on, we had this very strong vision saying, look, so the short of it is, we were maybe about, let's say, 5, 7 or 10 years ago, all the SMS messages that you get on your phone, right, from the local bank or e-commerce company or airline and so on, right? Gupshup was enabling all of those messages. Now, those messages were going on SMS, which is ubiquitous, but is very primitive because it's just a plain text message and all you can do is send a one-way notification. But we had this vision or this sort of hope, maybe, that, you could do more with that, right? Instead of just sending a message, imagine if the user could interact with the message, click on something, take the next step, maybe upgrade a flight or get some details about the credit card transaction or do something like that. But the ecosystem didn't allow it. So we actually launched our own app called Team Chat that was maybe the world's first smart messaging app, if you will. Now, it didn't succeed, but we learned a lot of things through that. And then when Facebook Messenger opened up business APIs in 2016, we were the first bot platform. Again, it didn't work because nobody uses Facebook Messenger, at least not in India. But in 2018, what happened was WhatsApp opened up these business APIs, which then allowed you to send business messaging. And then because WhatsApp is a richer medium, it's not just one way, but can be two-way, interactive and conversational. And once you do that, it just opens up the floodgates, right? And the big idea really is, everything you can do on a website or an app, now you can do through these conversational experiences. You can do marketing, you can do commerce, you can do customer support, right? And the consumer experience is delightful because, just like you can chat with a friend or family, well, what if you could chat with a business in exactly the same way? So now we had this idea and we were working on it since 2014, but in 2018 is when it came on WhatsApp, which everybody uses, which means now, so as they say, success is when preparation meets opportunity, right? We were prepared, but now the ecosystem and the opportunity opened up. And that's where we were the first to it. We built out a lot of capabilities. We offered it to businesses and so on. So that started ramping up a little bit. And then once COVID hit, it became even more critical, right? Because people are not going into stores and so on. So everything moved digital. So you needed more messaging volume and so on. So our revenues grew dramatically. Our product was ready, by far the most advanced capability out there. And today, I think literally last month, for the first time, our non-SMS revenue surpassed SMS revenue, right? So think about it, like 4 years ago, it was 0% of a low base, and now it's more than 50% of a much larger base of revenue. So it's been incredible growth. And we were the only ones. There were many other SMS companies. They didn't have this vision. They weren't able to do it. So, I think there was a longish answer to what you were asking, but it's really, we had this vision, we were prepared for it. And then when the market and the ecosystem sort of enabled it, we just had a huge growth spurt. So that's why you've been hearing a lot about it. That's why we were able to do a big funding round. And then we acquired another 4 or 5 companies, and then you asked about the near-term future. I think to me, conversational engagement is literally like the internet coming into India for the first time, and not just India, but all the emerging markets, right? Brazil, Indonesia, and so on. In those countries, in the US, for example, when the internet came in the mid-90s, every business and brand built websites. Now, in the emerging markets, which are mobile-first ecosystems, and everybody is on WhatsApp, I think every business, every brand, right, is going to have to build these chatbots, like not just the big banks, but even the Kirana store or the local panwala, right, is going to have a WhatsApp storefront. They're not going to have a website or an app, but they're going to do it on WhatsApp, and Gupshup enables all of it, and in many other countries as well. So it's very exciting, and I think we have huge ambitious plans. We think it could be a massive sort of tech platform in the emerging market. So anyway, sorry for the longish answer.
This is super helpful. I think I have the Shah Rukh Khan version of what you said earlier, which is that it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. It sounds like an oxymoron, but it is really true, right? You do become a success. What did you say? Preparation meets opportunity, right? So
yeah, and I think in my case, right, I've had this overnight success, 20 years in the making. I've had that happen twice, because my previous company, Elance or Upwork, also from founding to IPO was 20 years, and then same for this one. So yeah, I think sometimes these are the untold stories of Silicon Valley or of tech entrepreneurship, really, which is it just takes. It takes a lot of effort and time and twists and turns, but the media doesn't find those stories interesting, so they never get reported. And when they do get reported, it's a little bit like social media, right? When you look at it, you think everybody's living this wonderful life, always vacationing in fancy resorts, wearing good clothes. Yeah, but life's not like that.
Which are basically all green screens.
Exactly.
Right. No, I think this is super inspiring, Birut. Thanks a lot for sharing your experience with us. And I think for everybody who's a entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur, I think the one takeaway from all of this is that it is a long haul. And even these overnight successes that you hear today have been sometimes 20 years, 30 years in the making. And it's just that you hear it in these last 2, 3 years, 4 years, right? Just like me. I've known about Weberoo / SMS Gupshup / Gupshup now for the last 20 years. But really, if I didn't have all of my neighbors working for Birut at some point of time, I would have really known about this company only in the last 4 years, right? Which is likely the case for all these large companies that we all these overnight large companies that we keep hearing of, right? It is a long haul, and if you're not in it for the long haul, right, better to become a job seeker, right, than a job creator. I'll open it up for questions here from the audience, and I have a couple, but I'll hold off mine for in preference to the audience. Yes, can we get the mic? And Rishi, you're next.
Yeah, my name is Krishikesh, and my question is, you spoke a lot about India, right? India messaging and all. But most of the SaaS companies that are built from India, they prefer servicing to the US or European markets. So I would just like to understand if you can share, what is the revenue share between India and other countries, or going forward, which markets you are tapping to or you are bullish on? Because there has been this notion that there is a price parity, like Indians SMS cost in India is cheaper, even the WhatsApp charges in India are cheaper considered to that. So what is Gupshup's take on it?
Yeah, so firstly, almost or more than 3/4 of our revenue is from India, believe it or not, right? So it's very India centric. And now we've invested in all these other regions recently, and I expect that to ramp up, right? So on a percentage basis, I would expect other regions to become larger, but India continues to remain a big part, will remain a big part of our business. I think in and of itself, the unit price doesn't matter, right? Because ultimately it's price times volume that gives you revenue, right? And in some ways, arguably, because the prices are low, the volumes are really high, businesses have made it an important part of everything they do. It's sort of it's a critical part of the product experience, right? When you swipe a credit card, you get a notification, and now you've grown to expect it, because people run their lives literally through all these notifications and messages that you receive of different kinds, and it's only going to get better and better and richer and much more interactive and more powerful. So I think other SaaS companies, it depends. Look, every SaaS business has to figure out, in general, of course, selling to the global markets, the willingness to pay, right? The average contract values tend to be a lot higher, and it might make sense. It depends on what you're selling and who you're selling to, right? Most other B2B SaaS companies I look at, they tend to focus on selling to the developed markets. I think our focus is entirely the emerging markets and India's biggest, but LATAM, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa, right? It's for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, actually the developed markets are not the right markets for us, right? Because this is the conversational internet, right? While the US already has a well-established web consumer habit formed. So I think there's no such thing as better or worse. It's just what's the right thing for your product and your strategy and your business. Yeah.
And also, if I can add, this distinction is going away for most part, right? And what's the Facebook of India? It's Facebook, right? What's the Twitter of India? It's Twitter, right? And so on. So I think that distinction, that here is the American version, let's say, and here is the Indian equivalent of that, right, is going away, because Indian companies are aspiring, and successfully so, scaling to the world, and no company in their mind wants to ignore India as a market, right? So both ways, it's both true, right? And for Seclor, I can tell you that when we started in India, started selling almost exclusively in India, and we are a B2B software security company, and today India contributes about 8% of our revenue, and we are totally fine with that, right? No problems at all, right? Rishi.
Hey, hi Birud, Vishal, great. Thanks for the inspiring talk, and always a pleasure to listen to you guys. Birud, one question: as a horizontal platform company, do you face pressures from customer prospects about, essentially solving a slice of their problem, and they want you to do the whole thing? Or how do you navigate basically being a turnkey provider versus focusing on your own product, which is the platform itself? And how do you kind of navigate those sales conversations?
Yeah. Firstly, hi Rishi, good to see you, man. I think, so you're right. I think it's every business has to, well, we all try to define what we want to focus on, but then customers have a habit of pulling us into adjacent spaces or to do more things because from their side, they want fewer vendors and they want well integrated products. And from your side, you want to focus on what you're doing and what you're really good at and go from there, right? So I think there's always that push and pull that you have to drive. And I think, at least in our case, I'll tell you what we've decided is really to focus on everything conversational. So we don't try to do email, we don't try to do the web, we don't try to do mobile apps. We try to do conversational. Now, sometimes it can be challenging, yeah, because the business says, hey, we are engaging our customers on all these different channels and we want to work at that, right? But the bet that we are taking is that just like there was a transition from web to mobile, especially in the emerging markets, I say, I expect another transition from mobile apps to mobile messaging, right? Where instead of people having to download dozens of apps, everything, WhatsApp would be a super app, and you can use WhatsApp to interact with all these different services and experiences. Now, obviously, until that transition happens, we're going to keep seeing some of this push and pull. But I think enterprises are starting to see you always have to deal with this 80-20, right? Because you can't cover everything and you're not going to be able to solve every problem for every customer. And sometimes you just have to say, no, we're happy to recommend or refer or we have. So the next best thing is what we do is we integrate well with other tools that solve the adjacent spaces, right? So there are, for example, MarTech tools, CRM tools, commerce like Shopify and so on, right? Ultimately, it's becoming a patchwork of SaaS tools that enterprises have to buy, right? So I think if you integrate well out of the box, and then you say, look, you want a catalog, get Shopify, you want CRM, get Salesforce or HubSpot, and then we will coexist very seamlessly with all those tools. And so you can have, a seamless experience and a whole horizontal experience, but I don't have to provide the whole thing. We're going to provide just something that we are good at.
And just hire good product managers. Right, I think that's the one success formula. I'm not trying to ignore the center and the left, so I don't know if you have time for. We have time for one more question. I'll take the question on the left. I'm not trying to ignore the audience on the left hand side. So can we have the mic over to this gentleman? Yes.
Thanks, Birut. Thanks, Vikas, for taking us through. So my question is, so I work for a bank, and particularly from a banking standpoint, just wanted to understand your experience, like platforms like GupShup, how you see the tractions coming up when there's an omni-channel customer that we want to touch base with, and especially with the advent of things like ChatGPT. So how do you see particularly BFSI sector taking up this?
Oh, I think it's going to transform the BFSI sector, right? If you think about it today, when you think of a bank, you assume that there are physical branches and then there are ATMs all over the country. But think about it, right? With this smartphone, I mean, everything you need could be right in there, right? Except for maybe withdrawing cash. You can do everything that's possible in a branch or in an ATM right on the mobile device. So, and then you're going to have this conversational experience that'll be very delightful because of ChatGPT and other large language models, right, that have made these things so much better and easier. It's almost like, a bank can provide a super intelligent, knowledgeable relationship manager to every customer, not just the HNI premium customers, but to every customer through software. They're available 24/7 in any language. They're very knowledgeable, can take care of all products, is hyper personalized, right? And it's as simple as chatting on WhatsApp. So for a bank, they can provide a delightful experience. And for a consumer, it's just super convenient, always on, very easy, and so on. So I think we are seeing a lot of adoption from banking, but every other sector, right? I think it's really going to transform services in India, where for the longest time, you've had this false choice, right? Which is either you charge, either you sell products at a very low price and don't provide customer support, right? Or you provide customer support and charge premium pricing. And either way, it's a lose-lose situation. The best thing is, can you provide great customer support at a very low price? And I think this technology, conversational engagement, enables that sort of interactions, and in particular in banking, right? Because that touches every consumer in the country, and it's a very consultative sort of process. They have a lot of questions. They need to manage their money and so on. So I think, certainly it's one of our biggest verticals, and it's transforming. I think it's going to transform virtually every industry in the country and in all the emerging markets.
I think what's amazing, thanks a lot, Birud, and I think that's about all the time we have for questions. What's amazing here is that after all these years, Birud's passion for the company and the possibilities continues to remain high. If this secular thing doesn't work out, I'm going to come and work for you, Birud. So keep a spot for me. And I think this is something for... Oh, absolutely. Right. I'm putting in my application right now. I think for everybody here, one thing, and Birud is a great example for this, which is how to keep this passion going after many ups and downs, many failures, of course, many successes. Keeping this amount of passion, and this is what we are nearing midnight here in the Bay Area or thereabouts, let's say, in the Bay Area. Thanks a lot, Birud, for sharing your passion and your time in the middle of the night with us, and we look forward to seeing you on the campus soon.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think just on that point, look, anything that's worth doing is worth doing passionately, right? What else is there in life, right? What else would you be doing? So at least for me, I find this really exciting, enjoying, and it's always a pleasure to talk to people at IIT Bombay, right? Everything, it's a topic for a different presentation, but all my life story is all very intricately and deeply tied to my experience at IIT Bombay, both academically and professionally and so on. So really excited to be here.
I think
Please
there are a lot.
reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever, and thanks for having me here.
Thanks a lot, Birud, and I think I can say that for mine too. From the time I got into the campus, which was 1996. To 23, which is what, 27 years now? Wow, I am old. I've studied here as well as run 2 companies which have both come out of SINE. One of the first SINE companies was my first company. So I think my life has been in and around the campus for the last 27 years also. So yeah, I think I share that passion and what this institute and SINE has done to at least Birud and Mai, and I think we have a lot of others we heard earlier from two other brilliant entrepreneurs, has been amazing. And thanks a lot, Poini specifically, who's been at the forefront of nearly everything I know about SINE ever since year 2000 or 2001, very early on, that we started seeing you. I think behind every successful man there's a woman, and behind every successful technology commercialization program there's definitely Poini, right? So thanks a lot, Poini. Big call out to you. Thanks a lot, and I think you've built an amazing team around you also, and kudos for that, right? You attract your vibe and your tribe and so on. I think the team that you've built and made this whole thing successful is absolutely amazing. Thanks a lot for that. And thanks a lot to IIT Bombay. Thank you. And Birud, I'll collect your memento, and then I'll figure out, depending on the contents, I'll figure out whether I want to give it to you or not.
No worries.
Thanks a lot, Birud.
Let's hope there are many more unicorns out of SINE. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look forward to that. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Birud.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you, Birud, for that session. Birud, before you leave, I would like to invite Shaji Varghese, Deputy CEO of SINE, to hand over the memento to you. And Birud as well. And now we move to the last entrepreneurial story of the day. Can you have the next slide? It's cracking the biocode bench to business bioscience story. So 13 years back when I graduated in Biotech from IIT Vellore, the career options that most of us and even my fellow students had was either to pursue further research or PhD or your postdoc, starting a company or having an IP being spun out from the university. That was unheard of 10, 12 years back, especially in the Indian context. There have been various heroes or various sort of examples we had from the West, but in India it was quite limited. And especially being biotech, at that time it was called unpredictable art. I still remember some of the textbook which actually defined biotech as unpredictable. But now things have changed and things have come up in a big way, especially in the startup ecosystem. There have been bio-incubators being set up across the country. There are various or a handful of startups, I would say, which have evolved and have become successful and have been trendsetters. And we are proud to say that there have been 2 startups who have been trendsetters, been incubated at SINE. And that's just a background about the session on cracking the biocode. To moderate the session, I would like to invite Dr. Abdur, who is the CEO and at the Wadhwani Research Center for Bioengineering, WRCB at IIT Bombay. He heads the transnational research efforts in the center. He's passionate about healthcare, working towards facilitating R&D and commercialization of state-of-the-art technologies. Dr. Abdur had held various healthcare research leadership roles in the industry and academia and has co-founded 2 companies in the healthcare domain. Welcome, Dr. Abdur. I would like to invite the speakers as well. Dr. Anirvan Chatterjee, he is co-founder and CEO of Haystack Analytics. He holds a PhD in applied biology from the University of Mumbai, postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oxford and IIT Bombay. And Haystack Analytics uses genomics to diagnose infectious diseases such as tuberculosis and sepsis faster. Haystack was recently recognized as the Tech Startup of the Year Big Data by Entrepreneur India. Welcome, Anirvan. I'd like to invite Professor Rahul Purwar. He is a faculty member at the Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering at IIT Bombay, and also the CEO and founder of ImmunoAct. Professor Purwar is a pioneer in cancer immunotherapy and skin immunology research. He has completed his PhD from Hanover Medical School, Germany, and postdoctoral studies from Harvard Medical School, Boston. Professor Purwar and his team at ImmunoAct is working towards the first indigenously developed CAR T-cell immunotherapy for cancer treatment, and they are committed to bring cancer therapy to Indian patients at an affordable cost. Welcome, Professor Purwar. I hand over the session to Dr. Abdur.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Rahul and Anirvan. So it's a pleasure and privilege being here on stage with 2 of the rising stars of Indian biotech, Dr. Rahul Purwar, who is the Chief Executive of ImmunoAct, and Dr. Anirvan Chatterjee from Haystack Analytics. I'm especially thankful to them. They are extremely sought after people. They could be in 10 different places, but they chose to be here with us. Thank you so much. So my first point of discussion is, the word deep tech is widely and broadly, loosely used today, right? And if you look at the scale of tech from 0 to 10, and 10 being the Mariana Trench of deep tech, I would say biotech is very, very close to that, right? I mean, in terms of complexity, it has all the complexity of any other tech, go-to-market complexity, regulatory complexity, but it also has the technological complexity of combining biochemistry, molecular biology, and so on. And in addition to that, generally entrepreneurship is rare, right? Biotech entrepreneurship is even more rare. And you add 2 more obstacles to that, which is in academia in India. So you've got so many different steeples to cross, and you have done, both of you have done that. So the first thing I would like to do is for you to share your journeys, and with special emphasis on particular events that could have catalyzed your thinking, which brought you to where you are today.
Hello, yeah. Thank you again, SINE, and the SINE team for inviting me here, and Abdur, it's great to chat with you all the time. So, I think, it was a very interesting conversation with Poini a few years back, which I did not quite comprehend at that point of time, and I must say that Poini chose not to tell me where she is pushing me into. And here we are. So I think I was working with Professor Kiran on viral genomics, and we're trying to see how we can reduce the cost and time to discover new viruses and understand their pathogenicity using DNA sequencing. And it was also the time that I had returned from Oxford, where we had just kind of, with the team at Oxford, launched TB whole genome sequencing. And at that point of time, it was the first disease which was ever launched for genomic diagnostics anywhere in the world. And what really brought me back was if TB genomics was changing things in NHS UK, with probably the largest number of TB patients in India, it was a huge disservice that it wouldn't be available in India. So while I was working in viral genomics, I was also speaking with a lot of TB stakeholders in India. And if you're in IIT, and if you're doing some research, you get called to tables which take decisions. And for 2.5 years, I was quite frustrated that I've been telling them, okay, this is what you need to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's how you get genomics rolled out in the market. And nothing was happening. And then Professor Kiran said, let's go and meet Poini. And once I met Poini, Poini said, काम करो खुद कर लो. And I was like, इसका क्या मतलब होता है? खुद कर लो का क्या मतलब होता है? खुद तो हम लोग पेपर लिखते हैं. So I had no idea what I was getting into. And then I think Prasad gave me this lean canvas. Then I read about lean startup. And I said, अच्छा ठीक है. एक नॉवेल्टी चाहिए, एक वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन चाहिए, एंड एक GTM स्टोरी चाहिए कि कैसे होगा. एंड आई नो देयर आर TB पेशेंट्स. सो आई थिंक फॉर द फर्स्ट 1 year when people used to ask me कि what is your business model, टेस्ट भेजेंगे, पैसा लेंगे. That's about it, because everything else has been sorted out by academics. Genome sequencing has been available for more than 20 years. It's there everywhere, just not available to the patient. So how difficult can it be? And I think that's the story. The first part of the story, I don't know whether he's reached this hall or not, because he's feverishly talking to someone outside, Gaurav, who is my co-founder. And I think that's the first piece of the puzzle. I realized that science to nahi bikega. So we need proper guidance. First was Poini, Gaurav, my co-founder, and no matter where Haystack goes, I'm always grateful to Gaurav for joining us and actually believing in our work. And from there on, this journey from sequencing being available everywhere to made available to a TB patient who lives in Dharavi or a TB patient who lives in Meerut. How do we scale this technology? That has been the journey, and I think along the way what I have learned is everybody wants to talk about regulatory, everybody wants to talk about a lot of other things. What nobody tends to understand is nothing in healthcare is a product unless a clinician puts it on his or her prescription. And that is the journey. How do you get clinicians to actually prescribe a test on DNA sequencing, which they have not studied in their coursework? And how do you get them to use that information to actually change the life of a patient? And what I have learned is we haven't tried to do either. We've just made technology available to the clinicians. The first few patients of TB that we received the samples for were literally in their ICU beds. A TB patient in an ICU bed is no longer a patient who is infectious. The patient is actually completely, it's not the immune reaction eating away the patient. Till today, where we have now have doctors, when they find a TB patient is actually a TB patient, the first test they order today is our whole genome sequencing test. And that's taken about 1.5 years to get to. And when we see doctors in Meerut, in Ahmedabad, in far-flung places of this country, to be able to not only access a TB test, which is genome sequencing based, also use it for a TB patient and save their lives earlier, but also it is affordable enough for the patients to actually use that. So that's been a journey. I'll talk about other things as we go along. But at the end of the day, it was SINE who said, "Khud kar lo."
Thank you, Abdur, and thank you, SINE and Poini, for inviting us here. Our journey is actually just started. It's not very old journey. And it's mainly about helping our patients and bringing some state-of-the-art technology to our country. Because our country and our patients, they don't have access to very state-of-the-art technologies. All of these things are available in the West. And even whatever the price they are available there. And at no price they are available in our country. So when I joined here as a faculty member in IIT Bombay almost 10 years ago, and when I started work on cancer immunotherapy or cancer therapy, it was like it was always told this is a technology institute. Biosciences, not many people understand because they are more like technology people. And when I visited Tata Hospital here for the collaboration purpose for first time, one thing I noticed, so many patients, and most of them are treated with chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery. And that was the time 2010 to 12 when immunotherapy just picked up. Like there was a Nobel Prize, everybody was talking about immunotherapy, but it was not even available. And when I asked why it is not even available to our patient, they said it's not affordable, it's extremely expensive. Then after 4-5 years later, this another technology came called gene therapy technology, gene therapy. When you ask, they said, this is not even possible. These are just dreams because these technology cost $1 million for one patient. So imagine $1 million a patient, one drug, one dose for one patient cost $1 million. I am sure majority of us in this even room who are probably India's elite, none of us can afford it because if our loved ones fall into this cancer trap, hardly any of us can afford $1 million per patient. And the success is still 50%. 50% will not even benefit. But success is at least 50%, which is huge in cancer. So how to give the access of these kind of state-of-the-art technologies to our patients? That was the objective for which we are working hard. We have been working hard for the last 10 years. And almost 4 years ago, because a SINE function, I will tell you when I met Poini 4 or 5 years ago, and I told her our story that this is a technology we are doing. She said it's a good idea to have incubate, and you have not much to lose anyways. If fails, it fails, right? And when I told to the customer in this case like hospitals, they said it's a very, very good product, we will use it, but only issue is affordability. If you bring it cost down, we can, if we can afford it, our patient can afford it, it will be really revolutionary because it can cure cancer. It's not a technology which simply advances life by few months or few years. It can cure cancer. And this is something I can tell you even right now, this is the most advanced technology on this planet Earth, right now, in the healthcare system at least. Gene therapy is most advanced and these are curative platform, so they can cure cancer. And that's the research we have started here at IIT Bombay. We were, of course, as you can imagine, a lot of academic constraints, but despite that, we kept working hard, and we had the IP. So we developed the IP, then we had our company, we got funding. In the beginning, of course, as Anirban can tell and other startup co-founder or founders will tell you, there was delays, but now I think we are at a very good stage. We don't have problem of funds. We have the funds, we have the infrastructure, and we already are treating patients. And I can tell you today that very pleasant thing is that when we see that our drug made in India, developed at IIT Bombay, when cure patients, and we have success stories, that's the most satisfying thing in this journey.
Okay, thank you, Rahul. Thank you, everyone. Just to second the point that you made about gene therapy being the most advanced, I think the disruptive effect it's going to have on the entire healthcare industry, I don't think anybody is factoring in. You're going from a model of prescribing something like a statin drug to someone for the rest of their lives to completely curing them in one treatment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and another, absolutely, you said very rightly, these are disruptive technologies. And the reason, one of the other reason is that all these chemotherapies, radiotherapies, they are given for long period of time. So patient has to come for the hospital multiple times, because you can imagine one treatment of cancer patient, let's say, lasts for 2 years. So for 2 years, patient has to continuously come to the clinic. And in our country, I think I don't need to emphasize much. You all know that our patient adherence to the doctor is not very good. 2 times they go, and if third time their disease is not cured, they will not go to that doctor, they will go to another doctor. And that's another problem. But despite that, 2 years in general, you have to go to the doctor. These platforms, they are living drugs. So they only are one time and done. So the patient only have to approach one time to the doctor. Once they decide that this is the treatment they can get, one time they are treated, and that's it. So the treatment that can last for 2 years, you are finishing in few months, maybe 2 to 3 months, the time it is diagnosed to time it is cured. So this is another big advantage. And third advantage is most of you may be knowing chemotherapies are very, very toxic as well. Right? There are so many side effects. And these immunotherapies, they are mainly personalized medicine. So they are taken from the patient, just do some genetic modification, train the cells to fight the cancer, and they are reinfused back into the patient. And that's the reason why they are much gentler to the patient. So there are multiple advantages.
Absolutely. It is so disruptive, once in a century kind of an opportunity. I think the policymakers, whoever they are, should actually set in a substantial amount of budget, both at the institute level, at the country level, to actually give it a huge push, because we have an opportunity to take leadership into this, right?
Actually, India is right now, I would say, is a very, very nice place, because we have the talent. Right now, infrastructure is getting more and more better. And so what you need in these therapies, why they are expensive, if you study it a little bit, it's mainly the highly skilled manpower. First is, of course, IP. Yeah. So creating IP is the most important thing. But second is manufacturing. Manufacturing here requires highly skilled manpower, and 65% of the cost of manufacturing goes into the skilled manpower. What we have done, the way we have reduced cost to $1 million to around $30,000, the reason is that IP belongs to us, which is created at IIT Bombay, and highly skilled manpower as one of the objective of IIT Bombay is training manpower, right? So that another thing what we are focusing on and we are doing. So these are the two major components why we reduce the cost a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so on to my next point. A key attribute of entrepreneurs is persistence and resilience. In the face of all kinds of obstacles, they keep going towards their vision. But at the same time, it's helpful to have someone hold your hands, to come along the journey, to facilitate. And for you, SINE has been there right from day one, help you take the early entrepreneurial steps. You did touch upon SINE's role, especially Poini's role in your journeys. Can you elaborate a little bit more on specific facilities that were available to you from SINE that were really helpful early on?
It's not just about facilities that were available. I do remember from very early on, Poini kept on saying, "Yeah, TB is a big problem. You will solve it, but it's a government problem. Tumhara business nahi chalega." And I think that led us to a tremendous amount of innovation that we did to figure out that so TB is one bacteria, and resistance to that bacteria. We are kind of all understand that antibiotic resistance is probably going to make a lot of surgeries in the future impossible, because you can't do a surgery because the infection that you will get during the surgery probably going to die of it anyway because of antibiotic resistance. So we started asking the question within ourselves that if TB is going to take a while for the government stakeholders to come along, how do we expand the scope of our work to all other infections? And that presented us with a unique challenge that we needed to get sequencing to the hospital. So we needed to get closer and closer to the healthcare center, जहाँ पे हम लोग sequencing कर सकते हैं. And I think that led us to the next part, and that's where the facilities at SINE came really handy and remain one of the most important things to our story. Is we created this test called the Universal Infectious Disease Test. Now, basically what it does is, instead of trying a doctor saying, okay, you might have typhoid, go test for typhoid, you might have malaria, go test for this, the doctor is making a choice what you are testing for. The doctor is not making a choice what you will be treated for. What we wanted to do is change that paradigm. Can we get completely agnostic to the infectious agent and do a test which detects for the doctor what that agent is? And that's universal infectious disease. So we decided we'd do sequencing, and we'll do sequencing on the edge, which is in the hospital. So we had to make a kit. We obviously had automated the entire, to actually remove the entire skill required in bioinformatics is gone. It's completely automated. And that is where the Bioness facility, and I must name here Pranita, Dr. Pranita, who has been an unsung hero in our story. Through the pandemic, making that Bionest available. When we started using the DBT Bionest lab, we were the only one during the pandemic getting permissions from deputy director and everyone else. And today we manufacture probably world's only next generation sequencing kit which can detect any bacteria, any fungi direct from blood. And what that means is we are reducing almost 3 days of diagnostic delay. And in case of sepsis, when a person is in ICU, the cost of the 3 days can run into lakhs, and in most cases can also cost the person's life, because you're not able to find what infection it is and what antibiotic you can give. This is, in fact, the first test in the world which can be deployed using genome sequencing in a hospital, direct from blood, detect any bacteria, any fungus, and antimicrobial resistance in less than 12 hours with no skill upgrade. Single same test. And the kits are still manufactured at the Bioness facility. So yeah, one of the few things, and there are a lot of people in SINE who listen to my rant every day, but they do come up and give us solutions. So I wish we get the new building much sooner.
So your question was who all were the enablers?
Helpful to you in your journey.
Yeah. How helpful SINE was. So SINE was very helpful in the beginning, because as an academician, you have many questions when you are going to entrepreneurship. And most of the question you have, and you don't have any answer to that. And for that, I think SINE provides all the answers. Who to contact, how to contact, right from the even company incorporation. Because we do not know how to incorporate a company, how to start your funding process, who all to contact. I think there SINE plays a significant role.
So essentially handhold you through the initial experiences and so
exactly.
on.
Exactly.
Cool. So I'm trying to keep, although this is very interesting technology, I'm trying to keep the conversation around academia to entrepreneurship, and in a way that is directly impactful and helpful to faculty and student entrepreneurs of the future, right? So one thing that comes to mind, especially in a scientific setup in biosciences, is that the kind of people it draws into academia are people who are more aligned to scientific inquiry. They're curious about finding answers to open-ended questions and so on. So that's the mindset of a scientist. The mindset of an entrepreneur is more operational, distribution, marketing, sales, you name it, right? It seems like they're like kind of distant from each other. How did you bridge that gap? And what is your advice to future scientist entrepreneurs? How do they align themselves, harmonize between the scientific mindset and the entrepreneurial mindset?
I would say collaboration and the team. And so team is, I think, the most important thing here. For example, there are few people in the audience, like Shirish is there, who is from business side, who is helping us, who helped me in answering all the business questions because I don't understand them at all. So he takes care of all the business. Our students are here, a few of them I can see. They help us in IP creation, right? And even now we have the CFO as well, who helps Rajat, I think, here as well. I can see him. And he's helping us in the finance related matters. So I think if you have a good team, because academician, as you rightly said, he was telling कि हमारा काम paper लिखना है, right? But I think this mindset need to be changed. As even professor, our job is not just to create the IP. Our job is actually, as IIT Bombay, our job is to help the society. Whatever way we can help the society. If whatever technological advances we are doing, if they remain in the campus, they are not useful to outside world. I think we should go and propagate them. And that ecosystem, I think, is built in last 10 to 15 years, where academic research is now translated for the benefit of society. Earlier, probably that ecosystem was missing, but now we have it, and we should utilize it more and more, and we should make it better. And this is what we have done, that we had an advancement, which for some in the beginning may sound like this is only a millionaire's problem, or this is not our problem, because when we started, for example, our focus, when you go and present, the focus would be infectious diseases or developing the assays or developing the therapeutics, which are only in paisas or in rupees. And when we were developing, it was in thousands and lakhs, and in that to dollars, right? So if our therapy 30 lakhs rupees a year, 30 lakhs rupees per dose per patient, which is huge, right? But whatever it is, our patients, at least if right now only probably few can afford, but as you know that all the technologies, they have a life cycle. In the beginning, they may be very expensive and only few can afford. As the technology matures, their cost goes down. So somewhere we had to start. So any advancement we should do, I think we should think about the society. We should think about in our case, for example, patients. In other cases could be customers, how we help the customers, how we help the patients, and we should definitely translate, and this should be our mindset not to the just IP creation, just paper writing, our mindset to change to help the society and help the customers.
So to rephrase, the inventor's or the scientist's job is not done just by creating the IP, but ensuring that it actually reaches where it's supposed to reach, either by yourself or through help from some other end, right? Collaboration.
So I think in my experience, it's actually just out there. You should be able to listen, and that's what we do. If you go and meet clinicians, they don't have too much time, and in about 5 minutes they'll tell you what they want, and that is the delta between science and a science which is useful. So for example, Dr. Amita Joshi, who is in JJ Hospital, the head of microbiology, when I was speaking about this universal ID test, and we was like so super over the moon, like the science is fantastic. You add the DNA, all the samples are detected. It's like really magic. Any bacteria in the world, it pops up the name, and we kind of demoed it to her, and she said, "It's a bakwas hai." I said, "Kya ho gaya?" My class 10 student hand cannot use it. And she sent us back to the drawing board. How can we reduce the number of steps? How can we reduce the number of reagents? How can we reduce the complexity of storage? My TB test, we were in the market for 3 months, and we went and met a doctor in Bangalore, and he looked at it, and we thought the report was fantastic. He said, it's not making it, it's taking me almost a minute to understand this report. I should be able to understand it in 15 seconds. I don't have more time than that. And I think that is what teaches us at least what we should do, because working in super deep tech life sciences, it is very, very easy to get carried away. And when you're doing DNA sequencing, we can practically do anything in the world. But it is the market, and you have to be constantly in the market, and this is where Gaurav comes in with his experience. He's the 3X entrepreneur now. In fact, he was associated with one of the companies founded by alumni of IIT Bombay. No, 2 of the companies founded by alumni IIT Bombay. I think he insists on this part. Ho gaya na, kaam kar raha hai, approval hai, let's go to the market. The moment you hit the market, you realize that your science works, but the market is not ready for it, and you tweak it. And that is the delta which we live on every day. Every day, every client, somebody needs something extra, and you fine-tune the product to a place where it can be deployed anywhere. If you are in the market will teach you, provided there is value for your value that your product is delivering. If my product doesn't deliver value, the doctor is not interested in giving me GAN. Because my product delivers, the doctor is telling me how to make it better.
Makes sense. Thank you. I think just to rephrase what both of you shared is, as a scientist, you don't have to take it upon all on yourself that I have to do everything. Be out there, meet people. There are people to help. There are institutions to help, and get that help. Just out there, be interactive. But I think make it part of your psyche that my endpoint is not writing a paper. My endpoint is not creating an IP, but my endpoint is translating my invention to the world, right? So once you own that internally, then you do everything that is needed to make that happen over a period of time. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so I will open up for the audience for a few questions.
Hi, thanks to both of you for an excellent talk. So my question is to Dr. Anirvan. Can you take us a little more into, because yours is a place of care delivery. Now, you have hundreds and hundreds of hospitals, small clinics, small doctors, independent clinical practitioners. So how did you actually reach out on a pan-India basis? Can you just throw a little, so you had a product, but tell us a little about your sales and your distribution, go-to-market, basically.
So it was a stepwise function. So when we started with tuberculosis, the advantage that I had was a lot of the work was already done, and then it was textbook KOL driven. Partha is not here. Much of what I do, I learned from Partha, who is a mentor at SINE. It was KOL driven. So we kind of went to the top 10 microbiologists of this country, started our product with them, and from there it flowed, okay, why don't you go here, why don't you go here? But then what happened in that journey was, while we were not taking sequencing to the hospital, the question that you're asking, what happened was we created relationships with a whole ton of microbiologists, and by a ton I mean like 15. But that is enough. And so I have in the audience, I have Sanjana and Ranjan who's sitting there. They were the people who were receiving calls from doctors who got the first TB reports on genome sequencing, and they're like, "Ab kya kare? Tumne bola ki of the 18 drugs, these 7 don't work. Now where do I get the other 8 drugs from?" This is hard. This is really hard. Speaking one KOL at a time, but then that one KOL in their WhatsApp group would send it to 10 more doctors, to 10 key business leaders. That was the first part of the journey. There is no shortcut to what I have experienced till now, and we've barely scratched the surface. There is no shortcut in healthcare We have to go through KOLs, key opinion leaders. Key opinion leaders validate your science, they start using it, the clinicians start presenting their data in case studies, how patients' lives are saved, and that kind of lets the dominoes fall. But what was interesting is, once we created a trust with these key opinion leaders that our genome sequencing report is disproportionately better than anything available to them, it's better than microbial culture. Can you imagine telling microbiologists that microbial culture is not right? And when they start saying that, when you go back and tell, now I have a test which can look at any bacteria or any fungi, that trust actually brings you to their lab. And the way we go is, again, we go to the best microbiology lab. So I don't have Dr. Mahua here. She herself is from PGI. So it's the mecca of microbiology in India. With that, with her network, we get to AIMS, we get to Max, we get to Medanta, we get to each of these hospitals, one hospital at a time, go and demo it. That's what we are doing. It's really hard. I have Amrut here, who is a PhD from IIT Bombay, and probably has taken a few classes with Professor Purvar as well. He goes out there, demonstrates the technology, and it is that is the only way what I have learned works in healthcare. You go, demonstrate, build trust, and they give you 10 more clients. And that's what we are pursuing right now. Godrej Memorial, we went live with a human exome-based test for type 2 diabetes and cancer and cardiovascular disease. Once Godrej Memorial comes in, there are 4 more hospitals who are lining up. So that's the only way to reach out, through network, good product, which people can trust, and they take the word forward.
Good morning, Mr. Pankaj. Really thank you for, subject called healthcare, which is probably in ESG world, all scientists, investors are very serious about the subject matter. So my specific proposal from my side to your world, to global expansion for your project, from my side, since some of my investors are visionary investors from billion-dollar fund support. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm Subhash Tavre, ex-IIT in Bombay. My question is for Professor Rahul Purvar. Well, I'm very happy to know just now that you have a very good cancer treatment. So I would ask you, please let us know what type of cancers you'd be curing, and what would be the approximate cost and duration. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for coming and asking this question. Right. So we are working on right now on blood cancer, a specific type of blood cancer called leukemia and lymphomas. And these are B-cell leukemias and B-cell lymphomas. And duration of the treatment is hardly like one time, but total treatment could be a few months, as I said, 1 to 3 months. Then you know whether it's working or not working. So up to 3 months. And cost, right now we are thinking somewhere $30,000 range. What cost other places at around $1 million.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I thank Anirvan and Dr. Purvar for being here. Okay.
Can we take it?
So nice discussion and nice talk. I have a question for Dr. Purvar. So you are basically targeting the liquid tumors. So are you also planning for solid tumors, and also who are these patients actually who are getting benefits from your side? Are you guys selecting for some kind of clinical trial mode, or you are getting the patients directly who are approaching you?
It's a very good question. This technology has shown remarkable response in the liquid tumor so far. It is not very well working in the solid tumor. But there are thousands of trials going on across the world to treat the solid tumor with limited success. Very recently, some data came out for the brain cancer, that brain cancer can be treated with this technology. with good success, not as good as the liquid tumor or as the blood cancer, but at a very good success, because brain cancer, some of you might have heard, they are untreatable almost, and majority of the patients ultimately die very quickly. So this technology can help in those neuroblastomas, which is one type of the brain cancer. And a last question was what stage of the cancer patient you treat this with this medicine? Is that correct?
How can the patient access your therapy?
No, no.
How can a patient access
what
this
kind
therapy?
of patients actually, whether they're coming from their own or you are getting them through a clinical trial mode, just.
Yeah. So right now, this technology or this treatment is available in clinical trial mode in 4 different hospitals. One is Tata Hospital in Mumbai, Deenanath Mangeshkar in Pune, and 2 hospitals in Hyderabad. So these are the 4 hospitals which are running our clinical trial.
Excellent. With that, thank you, Rahul, and thank you, everyone. Good big hands, yeah.
Thank you so much for this session on cracking the biocode. Thank you, Professor Purwar, Nirvan, and Dr. Abdur for the session. I invite Shaji Varghese, Deputy CEO, to hand over the mementos to the speakers. Thank you. Next, I invite Shaji for the closing remarks and word of thanks.
Quite an interesting conversation we had, and a lot of insights. And some of the recurring theme that we have heard about is that failures do happen, but should not stop you from actually kind of founders to carry on with their plan in converting their ideas into concrete product. You need to kind of understand the market, make your product in such a way that it delivers value to your customer. Failures can happen, but it's part and parcel of an entrepreneur's journey. When we thought about this event, our focus was more on making it as founder-centric event. So by the founders, for the founders, and about the founders. And the conversation what we had today throws some light in terms of how entrepreneurship delivers value, be it to the society or at a personal level. So we heard about Idea Forge coming out with an IPO, which is actually delivering value to the founders and to the team. We have heard about Beirut talking about how it takes, it's a long haul in terms of the number of pivots that they had to do. They had to come out with new products as the market evolved, as the technology evolved. We listened about Professor Purwar and Dr. Anirvan talking about how to take technology to the market, how to make it affordable, and how bioscience or biotech actually is working, and how IIT Bombay is actually facilitating that. Our program started with Professor Santosh Gharpure talking about SINE, giving you a brief outline about SINE, how we have progressed over the last 19 years in terms of supporting the startups. And we heard from Deputy Director FA&A, Professor KVK Rao, talking about the ecosystem within IIT Bombay and how it is facilitating the growth of deep tech startups within our institute. Research is happening. We are seeing about 60% of the students are now in terms of doing their masters and research, and how SINE can actually facilitate that. And then Professor talked about IOE funding that will be available to the students, the faculty, and the researchers within IIT Bombay, so that we can accelerate the number of startups being generated within the institute and within SINE, and how SINE is facilitating it. As part of vote of thanks, I would like to express my warm gratitude to Beirut, who joined us from Bay Area, even though it's midnight out there, and he has been kind enough to be part of this event even after his session was over. I'd like to express utmost thanks to Beirut for that, and the other founders who took time out from their heavy schedule in terms of coming here, speaking here, sharing about their experience, talking about the challenges that they have gone through. Ankit, Professor Purwar, Dr. Anirvan, Shibam. It gives us SINE a kind of it indicates to us in terms of the value add that SINE has been an institute like an IITB and has been able to deliver in terms of the entrepreneurship and the startup ecosystem. In addition to this, I'd like to thank Professor Garpure for your constant support and being part of the SINE and kind of giving direction to us. For IITB for their constant support. For conducting this event, managing this event, I think SINE team, Rakesh, Aditya, Swati, and all other members who have been been a constant support. Thank you very much for this. And for all of you who have joined us today, been part of Foundation Day, special thanks. And hopefully we will have many more conversations during the year where we'll be talking about how IITB and SINE can facilitate and support startups in a big way. And as Professor said, we are looking at SINE 2.0. The scale of operation could be much more bigger. Maybe we'll have a lot more founders coming here. We had Professor Arindrajit, who actually who's a first generation entrepreneur, has recently set up his startup, space tech startup. That's a kind of a beginning that he has gone, and for him it was a great interaction that he had. So special thanks to all the moderators, Dr. Rab, Vishal. I think Vishal still for being part of this event and moderating the session. Yeah, so if I have missed out on anyone, please it's basically thank you from SINE to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. So that brings us to the end of the 19th Foundation Day of SINE. Thank you once again, all of you, for joining us and making it a memorable one. As mentioned earlier, we have 8 startups who have showcased their product outside. I'll quickly tell you what domains they are from. They are into music technology, healthcare and wound care, battery technology, carbon capture, solar energy efficiency based startup, another healthcare startup on dental and bone graft, point of care diagnostics, and plant-based meat. They're actually giving their products out to us as well as a tasting session for us. So these are startups based out of SINE currently. There are more other entrepreneurs who are, can all the entrepreneurs please raise their hands, or are they all outside doing the networking? So please, happy networking over food, and thank you so much from all of us at SINE. Thank you.